Alrighty, well, let's get ready to rock and roll here with Big Bad Pull-Up Pete. And here you see Pete, he's working on his pull-ups there. And this problem is going to be a work with me. And what that means is that I will do one step, and then you're going to pause it and copy down whatever I do, and then we'll go through the whole problem step by step, just like that. Without further ado, let's get started. And here is the scenario. You are in gym class attempting to do a pull-up. Your best friend, Pete, is doing a great job. He is on his first attempt, and for his first attempt, he does 3/4 of a pull-up. Then he moves on to his second attempt, and on his second attempt, he makes 5/6 of a pull-up. Your task is to figure out how many pull-ups Pull-Up Pete has done in all. So let's go ahead and look at this. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this aside, and on the first attempt he made 3/4, 3/4 of a pull-up, and then we need to add to that, and on his second attempt he made 5/6 of a pull-up. Now, as I mentioned before, I really want to go over how you think of fractions, and they can be thought of or said in three different ways. I can say 3/4, I can say 3 out of 4, or I can say 3 divided by 4. Now I'm going to talk about all those a little bit later. Same thing with this one, 5/6 or 5 out of 6 or 5 divided by 6. So let me go on into that, and we'll see why that works a little bit later. But first step, you should get this written, 3/4 plus 5/6. So hit pause, and then when you're ready, hit play, and we'll move on. So here's our next step. And my next step is to go ahead and make 2 fraction boxes. So I'm going to just make one right there, and then I'm going to make another one right next to it that is about the same size. And I've gone a little into that picture, so let me just shrink this down and move this a little bit. I'll move that one right there and that one right there. So go ahead and make your 2 boxes, and then hit pause if you need time, and then hit play, and we'll move on. And we are ready to move on. So now for our first one, in this box here, I'm going to make 3/4. So the first thing I got to do is divide it into 4 parts, because the bottom, the denominator, tells us how many parts this is broken into. So I'm going to go ahead and make 3 lines, because that will give me 4 parts. 1, 2, 3 lines, and that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Now on this second fraction, I'm going to make, it needs to be broken into 6 parts, so I'm going to make 5 lines. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what I'd like you to do right now is pause it and make sure that your fraction boxes look just like this, and then we'll fill in the numerator portions when you're done here. So go ahead and hit pause, and let's move on. Now for this this first fraction, I'm going to color in 3 out of the 4, because it tells me I get 3 out of 4. So I'm going to go ahead and make my fraction box and fill this in, and I get 1, 2, 3 out of 4. And then for this second one, I'm going to get 5 out of the 6. So I'm going to go ahead and color in 5 out of the 6, and I'm a little bit off here, so I'll slide that there. And now, as you see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6. So go ahead and make your 2 fraction boxes so they look exactly like that, and then hit play again, and we'll move on. Alrighty, it is time to move on. And now, the very most important thing when adding or subtracting, in this case we're adding, is that your denominators have to be the same. And if you look down here, these boxes, they need to be cut into the same size boxes, right? Now, these are cut into 6 parts, and these are cut into 4 parts, right, from the denominators. So the first thing I got to do is find my least common multiple that these two denominators have in common. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down here, I'm going to write LCM, which stands for least common multiple. And then I'm going to just draw a line, and I'm going to take my 4 and put that first because it's right here, it's the first one, and then my 6 right below it. So 4 and 6. And then I'm going to start by counting by 4s because those are multiples, right? So I'm going to just go 4, and then 8, and then 12, and then 16. And then for my 6s, I'm going to count by 6s, right? So I'm going to go 6, 12, and then 18. And if I look here, I can see that right here, I've got the common denominator of 12, or the common multiple, rather, of 12. So that means for this top box, I'm going to multiply it by 1, 2, 3, or actually cut it into 3 parts. For this second box, I'm going to cut it into 1, 2 parts. But before I do that, I would like to have you guys copy down the LCM. So copy all this information here, and then hit play, and we'll be ready to go again. All right, let's move on. So once again, as I said, I'm going to cut this into 1, 2, 3 parts. So that I'm going to make 3 lines here, and let's see if I can do that. I'm going to just enlarge this a little bit so it's easier to work with. And then I'm going to go 3 parts would give me 2 lines. So I'm going to go 1, 2 lines, and now that gives me 1, 2, 3 parts, and there will be 12 here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now I've changed this fraction into 12ths. Okay? I need to change this fraction into 12ths, and if I look down here, I can see that I'm going to take this and cut it into 1, 2 parts. So I'm going to simply draw one line down the center, and that's going to give me 1, 2 parts. So what I'd like you to do right now is hit pause and then make your new fractions so that they are turned into 12ths based on our LCM down here. So copy these so they look exactly like that, and then hit play. Okay, super. So now, if I'm looking at this, what I want to do is I'm trying to see how many pull-ups he's done here. So I can simply count these. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So he has done 19 12ths of a pull-up. Now, as you see, this is top heavy, right? So that means it's higher than the denominator is, right? 19 is obviously bigger than 12. So what that means is I can take some of these and move them over here and make one whole. So I am going to actually, watch what I do here. I'm going to cross this one out here, make that white, and then I'm going to fill in this one right here. Okay, and make that pink. And then I can take this one and move it away. So I'm going to move this one away, and I'm going to put it right over here to fill this box in. And then I'm going to do one more. I'm going to move this one over here and move it right over here. And as you see, now I have one whole fraction here. This is a whole, right? So that's one full box, right? So he's done one full pull-up there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 1 here. This is equaling the same thing. And then I've got over here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 out of the 12. And 1 and 7/12 is the answer. Now that's just our illustration, right? So we're going to do the algorithm in a minute. But what I want you to do right now is go ahead and pause this, and then with crayon, color these in and move them over here. Turn this into a one whole, right? and then count up your fraction pieces over here, and you should end up with 1 and 7/12. So do that right now, and then hit play again when you're ready. So I'll wait for you. Super. Okay, so now let's move on, and we're going to move on to the fraction, to the algorithm, right? And so for that one, I'm going to choose a new color here. I'm going to go with blue. And I'm going to write 3/4 right here. And then I'm going to add the 5/6 right over here. Now, what I need to do is, as you see, I do not have common denominators, right? So I'm going to use my LCM to find my common multiple, my least common multiple. And for this 3/4, I need to multiply it by the giant 1 so I don't change the amount, because anytime you anytime you multiply a number times 1, as you know, you get that same number, right? But I want to multiply it by a fraction that's really 1. So I get the same number, but I get different numerator and denominator. I'll have the same amount. So just like I did over here where I cut these into parts, I'm going to multiply this by 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to multiply it by 3/3. Now, that's going to give me 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. So I'm going to write my 9 for my numerator here. And then 4 times 3 is going to give me 12. So I'm going to write my 12 right here. And if you notice, 9/12 is what I had here in my original fraction after I converted it. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of the original 12. Remember, I moved these top 3. So then I'm going to do the same thing with my 5/6. So I'm going to multiply this by the giant 1 of, and this time I'm going to have the giant 1 of 1, 2, right? So 2/2. So I'm going to multiply this by 2/2. And 5 times 2 will give me 10. And 6 times 2 will give me 12. So now, as you see, the original that I had here, right? These 3 were filled, right? So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? 10 12s. But I moved these 3 right here so I could make this a whole, right? So now I simply have to add these up. So I'm going to do that by shrinking it again and drawing a line. And now remember, when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you don't add the denominator, because that only tells us the size of the pieces, how many parts this box has been broken into. So for the denominator, I'm going to just drop that 12, right? And then the second rule is that you do add the numerator. So 9 plus 10 is going to give me 19. So I'm going to write 19 right here. And as you see, that is going to agree with what we had here for our illustration. So I know that's a lot for you to write, but I want you right now to write the whole algorithm all the way to the answer, and then draw an arrow to your illustration answer, the original one that's top heavy or improper, and then hit play, and I'll show you how we reduce this to get to this. So go ahead and copy the whole algorithm. I'll wait for you. Okay, so now we want to change this fraction. Now, remember, we're going to change it into a mixed number here. And there's 3 ways to say any fraction. I can say 19/12, I can say 19 out of 12, or I can say 19 divided by 12. And in this case, I want to go 19 divided by 12. So I'm going to simply right over here, I'm going to take 19 and I'm going to divide it by 12. And 12 will go into 19 one time, which will give me 12, right? And then I subtract, and 9 minus 2 is going to give me 7, and 1 minus 1 is 0, right? So now my remainder is 7 out of the 12 that I have right here, because I'm dividing by 12. So with your remainder, you're always going to put your remainder as the numerator and your divisor as the denominator. So this is the answer. And now watch this because this is really cool. That answer agrees with our answer that we got when we moved our fraction pieces to create one whole for the 1, and then we had this 7 left over for the 7/12. So these agree as well. So that is fantastic. Please copy this reducing of this improper fraction and changing it into a mixed number. Copy that, and guess what? We're all done with this project. So please pay close attention. Make sure you understand this, because your next one you're going to do totally on your own, and then you'll watch the video and correct any mistakes that you make. And if you don't make any mistakes, you got to pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I'm really cool. All right, I'll see you next time. Sayonara.